something together, and this kind of fits in with what I'm going to talk about in a minute. So I'm going to sing a line, and I'm going to ask you to echo back. It goes like this. Everything is all right.
Everything is all right.
Take it easy and slow.
Take it easy and slow.
Now, just because you're so good at that, I'm going to make it harder. Now, the third line we do all together, and it's ain't no use in getting so uptight. Try it. Ain't no use in getting so uptight. And then we go back to echoing. Just go with the flow.
Just go with the flow.
Let's try it out together. Everything is alright.
Everything's all right.
Take it easy and slow.
Take it easy and slow.
Ain't no use in getting so uptight. Just go with the flow. Go with the flow. That's perfect. In good time, we will know what it's all about. All this fussing and fuming and dooming and glooming doesn't help us out. Everything is alright.
Everything is all right.
Take it easy and slow.
Take it easy and slow.
Ain't no use in getting so uptight. Just go with the flow. Just go with the flow. There's a place in the heart that is calm and still. You can take yourself there, settle down, have a chair, if you only will. Everything is alright.
Everything's all right.
Take it easy and slow.
Take it easy and slow.
Ain't no use in getting so uptight. Just go with the flow. Just go with the flow. Okay, here's the middle part, and it's an instrumental, but it's actually a vocalized instrumental. So I need people who can whistle. Do we have any whistlers in the crowd? Huh? Whistlers? So I'm going to ask you, the whistlers, to do the melody, okay? And the rest of us who are whistle challenged will go na 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 na. La 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 la. Right? You ready? La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. In good time, we will know what it's all about. All this fussing and fuming and dooming and glooming doesn't help us out. Everything is alright.
Everything is all right.
Take it easy and slow.
Take it easy and slow.
Ain't no use in getting so uptight. Just go with the flow.
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 Everything's alright. Thank you, Rose. Okay, I'm going to ask you to take another deep breath and let it out. In fact, I want to do a little bit of exercise with you. We're going to talk a little bit about facing challenges when they come our way. And one thing you can do, of course, when you're faced with a challenge is go inside and meditate. But sometimes there's just so much going on in your head that it's hard to silence your brain and so forth. So I found something that really helps me. I read this in a book by Mary O'Malley called What's in the Way is the Way. And she suggests that we say something to ourselves as we're breathing. And this is what we say. On the in-breath, we say in. Out-breath, we say out. In-breath, we say deep. Out-breath, we say slow. In-breath, we say calm. Out-breath, we say ease. In-breath, we say as is. Out-breath, we say I am here. Now, it takes me those three patterns, in, out, deep, slow, calm, ease, to get to the as is, which means I'm all right with what is. I am acknowledging and accepting that this is what is in this moment, as is. I'm not going to resist it, I'm going to fight it, as is. And most moments in our life, if we really think about just that one moment, it's okay. It's all right. It's all the stories we tell ourselves about the past and the future that get us in trouble. So, as is, I am here acknowledges our presence in this moment. So we're going to take a moment to try this, and I'm going to cue you, and I will just suggest that you do the in and out breath with these words, these concepts in mind. So you may wish to close your eyes, but you don't have to. That's up to you. So on the in-breath, in, out, deep, slow, calm, ease, as is. I am here. In, out, deep, slow, calm, ease, as is. I am here. So did you feel the shift of the energy in that room? I feel it in myself. It brings me into a place of calmness, and it helps me quiet that kind of monkey mind that sometimes takes over. I'd like to know how many of you were here the last time I spoke about life between lives. Oh, a lot of you. Okay, great. Well, this is going to be kind of Life Between Lives Part 2. And I'd like to kind of pick up where I left off. And I'm going to just review a little bit about the previous talk for those of you who were here and for those of you who won't remember. I did my dissertation about a year and a half ago on what happens to us in between lifetimes. And there's quite a bit that goes into that. And what I really wanted to focus on was the planning we do for the next incarnation. And there's a lot of documentation for that, which I won't go into. But we go through a process of planning the next time around. And one of the things that we plan are specific challenges that we want to have come our way in order to provide opportunities for us to grow and expand. And I'd like to read to you a little selection from my dissertation because it explains this quite well, I think. Blueprints, that's the plan for the next lifetime. Blueprints vary in the amount of difficulty that is planned. After a very difficult lifetime, a soul may choose to relax in the next lifetime and plan few significant challenges. The subsequent lifetime, they may plan tragedy and heartbreak in order to catch up to their learning goals. Not all difficulties are planned in the blueprints, however. We plan certain challenges, not for the purpose of suffering, but for the opportunities for learning and growth that they will provide. If we knew this, it would probably ease our suffering. My husband Pete had a heart transplant 9 years ago. We just had his anniversary a couple weeks ago. He says, I planned this. What was I thinking, huh? We might even be grateful for these challenges. The adage, the obstacle is the path, is fitting. Our karma is such that no challenge we face is too hard for us to endure. Souls may volunteer for very difficult lives. In that case, they are encouraged to see what is in store for them. We are not sandbagged by our guides. Souls know in advance about the specific lessons they will face and how they would benefit from living a burdensome life. Souls sometimes plan lives in which they are treated the way they treated someone else in an earlier lifetime. A person who was once bigoted against African Americans may reincarnate as a slave. A person or witch hunters and accusers may return as Jews in Nazi Germany. By experiencing contrast, these souls deepen their wells of compassion and understanding, and they create inner balance. When a person can move from personal suffering to service, he or she is living a life of raw courage and is an inspiration to others. It should be noted, though, that no one has to suffer in order to learn. You can progress and still enjoy your life. A truly happy existence is a deeply satisfying one that would include spontaneous wisdom and spiritual joy. All of our choices are designed to help us work out past karma and progress spiritually. In planning our lives, we have immense power to create the experiences we need to grow and learn. We also have free will to take advantage of these opportunities, or not. And although much in our life is charted, there's still a great deal of freedom of choice and a multitude of options. The timing of events is fluid. The blueprint is full of possibilities and probabilities. We make mistakes. We miss opportunities. In fact, if you look at the blueprint that you plan for a lifetime, and after that lifetime you look at the life that you actually lived, they're actually quite different, usually. There are many influences from other people that intervene. The life we actually live is usually quite different from the one we planned. That's all right, though. It's part of the deal. I also wanted to share with you some of the lessons that we build into our lifetimes. Now, remember, we have many, many lifetimes, maybe hundreds. And all the time we're working towards a higher level of consciousness. So there are many lessons that we'll learn in these many lifetimes. I listed some samples in my dissertation, and I'm not going to read all these to you, but I'll share with you some examples. We may want to focus in one lifetime on maybe 2 or 3 key lessons. And here are some of the lessons. Compassion, patience, service. Those were the 3 I chose for this lifetime. Also, we might choose jealousy, self-love, forgiveness, to be less selfish, empathy, surrender, creativity, leadership, making amends to those we have harmed in past lives, getting an education, experiencing gifts and talents, dealing with addictions, being mentally, emotionally, or physically challenged, parenting, fighting for a cause, helping to raise the consciousness of the planet. That last one is one I'd really like to touch on this evening, helping to raise the consciousness of the planet, because God knows we need that. Okay. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the work of Eckhart Tolle, and in his book, A New Earth, he said, "Life will give you whatever experience is most helpful for the evolution of your consciousness." How do you know this is the experience you need? Because this is the experience you are having at that moment. Okay. So I chose the title for this talk as "Why is this happening for me?" Because, of course, what we always say, why is this happening to me? We have a tendency to say that. But when we say, why is this happening to me, what it does is it pushes us right into victimhood or martyrdom, right? And if we say, why is this happening for me? It can move us into a place of deeper growth, of compassion, of awareness, of responsibility, the ability to respond, right? And of healing. And so I'd like to talk with you today a little bit about how we can do that. You know, we're always looking for an explanation. Questions like, why did that person walk out of my life? You know, why did I lose my job? Why did he get sick? Why did so-and-so die? Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why is our country in such turmoil? We want answers like that, huh? But I really believe that someday, as I said in the song we just sang, we'll understand that sometime. In good time, we will know what it's all about, but not now, because we're sort of moving through the experience. If we knew all the answers now, we wouldn't have that opportunity to grow and expand and learn. One day, it will be clear. A woman by the name of Mary O'Malley wrote a book called What's in the Way is the Way, which is another way of saying the obstacle is a path. And she said, life is set up to bring up what has been bound up so it can open up to be freed up so you can show up for life.
Oh, cool.
Let me do that again. Life is set up to bring up what has been bound up, so it can open up, to be freed up, so you can show up for life. And that's life with a capital L. Pain is going to happen, right? We're going to have things that happen to us that are difficult. Anybody who is of the age of anybody in this room has had something happen to them that's been painful. It's the human condition. It's going to happen. So pain is inevitable. But I'm going to suggest this evening that suffering is optional. Because suffering really comes from all that stuff that goes in our mind, all that storyteller that tells us things. And kind of spins webs and creates spells that we fall under, because that voice interprets our experience. Now, we have other voices in our head, don't we? We're kind of schizophrenic that way. And not to make fun of that, but all of us have different voices that speak to us in our mind. One is very loud voice is the ego. And another very loud voice is the voice of spirit. And so what we need to do is get to a point where we can kind of discern where the messages are coming from. In Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh answers that question. How do I tell if it's really coming from you? And the answer was, from me you will always hear the highest truth, the most loving answer, the most supporting communication. Anything else is coming from someplace else. So if it's loving and supportive, you know where that's coming from. When I heard the word resistance in the last few months in a political sense, it kind of appealed to me, because I think of all the movies I saw with the French resistance and all the really nifty things they did and the bravery that was involved when they were working against the Germans especially. However, the word resistance in metaphysical terms has a different connotation. You've probably heard the phrase, what you resist persists, right? So when something happens to us that we're not really happy about and we resist it, it's not likely to go away. It makes more sense for us to acknowledge it, look at it right in its face and say, okay, what's this about? What are you trying to teach me? Why am I getting this response? Somebody suggested when you feel resistance building up in yourself that you make a U-turn, a Y-O-U turn, and you ask yourself, okay, what is it this is calling up in me that needs to be healed? And I'm here to tell you that relationships is the place where this happens the most. Especially relationships with people we're really close to. That is the rich fodder for growth, because conflicts arise, differences of opinions arise. And when somebody close to you pushes a button, because that person knows where your buttons are, right? You can resist that and kind of close down. You can fly off the handle and you can get angry. Or you can take a U-turn and say, okay, what is this inside me that's resisting, that's responding so strongly to this? It's probably something that needs healing. And we all have those places, don't we, that need healing. Most of those really serious healing needs come from our early childhood. When I was about 7, 8, 9 years old, I lived in a neighborhood where the kids would get together on a summer evening and play softball in the school softball field. And now I was the youngest of 3, and I was a girl. Nobody taught me how to throw a ball, how to swing a bat. But I showed up. I wanted to play. And I got up there with my bat, and Stubby Overheel said, "Easy out, easy out." And he was right. That was an easy out, and I struck out. And that little voice inside my head said, "You're not good enough. You're a failure. You can't do sports." And when I showed up after that, I was always the last one to be chosen for a team. And that little message has stuck with me for many, many years. I have a hard time. In fact, I was in a seminar about a year ago, and part of the program was everybody was going to get together and play volleyball. And I go, I can't do that. I'm terrible at sports, I'll be a failure. And all this emotional stuff came up for me. But I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And you know what? I had a good time. And I realized that that was my little girl that was telling me that because I wasn't good at softball at age 8 or 9, that I was a failure, I wasn't good enough. But each of us can probably remember something from our childhood or our younger years that patterned us with something that may still need healing. Maybe not. Maybe you've already done all that work. But if you haven't, that's what shows up when somebody pushes your buttons or when a situation comes up and you fly off the handle. So if you can make that U-turn, why do U-turn, and look inside, you can do a lot of healing with that. Most of our pain comes from resistance. And most of the pain of resistance is worse than the actual pain that we would feel without the resistance. Because what happens is we close down, we shut down. And when we shut down, it's like being in a room with no windows and the windows can't open, okay? Or they're blacked out, so there's no light in there. But if we can confront our resistance, look at it, do the U-turn and say, okay, I understand what this is about. And that gets us more in touch with our heart. And that's what opens the window and lets some light in on that. Eckhart Tolle says, to be fully open to life, you need to be open to whatever is going on inside you. And that's not just the joy and the love, but any of the anger or the resentment or the fear or whatever that comes up within you. What we want to do is move from that place of resistance to a place that says, I'm right where I need to be. Life is supporting me. I'm being carried down this river. I can let go and trust that I'm safe. In other words, to show up for life. The moment that we accept what's happening, what troubles we've had and we've been through, a door opens, a window opens for some light to come in. Pete and I had a car, we don't have it anymore, but it had a bumper sticker that said, don't believe everything you think. You seen that? Don't believe everything you think. Okay. So that refers to that kind of storyteller in your mind, right? That tends to filter your experience, and often it filters it in a way that doesn't serve you. The voice in your head has a mind all of its own, okay? And sometimes the very basic part of that, when you get past all the details and the experiences, are these kind of messages. I'm separate from life, capital L, life, which is the same thing as God. Life is not safe. I must control life. I must do it right. I'm not doing it right enough. Because I'm not doing right enough, I'm wrong. I'm unlovable. I'm all alone. Those are basic messages that may be so deeply buried in our unconscious mind that we don't even know they're there. And they're kind of like spells that weave their magic on us. So suffering comes from believing those stories and listening to them in your mind instead of showing up to what is going on in your lifetime. You mentioned something about the mind when you were reading the Coptic moment there. The mind was created to help us maneuver through our lives. But you may have heard the phrase, the mind is a wonderful servant but a horrible master. Have you heard that before? Your heart, rather than your mind, is the source of wisdom and healing and love. And it's very smart. Scientists have learned, we hear about all the messages that our brain sends to all the different parts of our body. Scientists have learned that our heart sends more messages to our body than our mind does. So your mind might say, well, let's figure out how to control life. I'll need to control everything and then I'll be safe. But But you don't need to control life. It's kind of like a cork on the ocean saying, okay, I'm going to control my life. I'm going to have positive thoughts, and all this stuff will come true for me. But that cork is controlled by other things too, all right? The vast ocean. Certainly, we want to bring a positive aspect to life, but we need to acknowledge that there are other forces at play, right? And we need to, instead of listening to those limiting messages from our brain, maybe it would be more constructive to become curious about it. I wonder what this is about. We need to pay attention to those messages rather than thinking that they are who we are, okay? Think about the thoughts. That's actually a very high level of abstract thinking. But thinking about your own thoughts and asking, I wonder where that came from. I wonder why I'm having that kind of experience, is one way out of listening to that voice. I'd like to talk with you for a minute about consciousness. The Hindus call it enlightenment. Jesus called it salvation. The Buddhists call it the end of suffering. They also say enlightenment. This morning I heard a term that I like, a higher vision. All those encompass this kind of awakening, which is what we're all moving towards, especially everybody in this room. O'Malley says the consciousness is the ability to see and be with what is without needing it to be any different. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't try to make changes if we don't like the way things are in the world, but it means that we acknowledge what is, and we can be at peace with that moment. Spiritual growth is the evolution of the individual. I think it's kind of interesting. You don't find a lot of young people on a percentage basis who are real interested in consciousness. It tends to become of greater interest as we mature. And as our body starts to decline, sometimes we wind up being more open spiritually, which I think is really interesting. It's kind of Scott Peck, M. Scott Peck, some of you know from The Road Less Traveled, said, as our body declines, we may grow spiritually against the natural resistance of our own lethargy. Because we do have to work at that. We do have to develop our own consciousness. It's not going to happen if we just sit on the couch and watch TV all the time or complain about what's happening in our world. As we heal our inner world, the experience of our outer world changes. And so does the outer world itself. Because everything you do impacts on the world. You may think that's not true, that one person isn't going to make a difference. But it does make a difference. You do make a difference. This whole thing about consciousness is really important right now. We have this planet that keeps spinning, but it's in trouble, isn't it? You've heard about the icebergs melting and in danger of flipping, and they're 10 times deeper than they are above the water, and they could cause tsunamis. You hear about the near starvation levels in Africa. Climate change is a huge issue for us, but the world keeps spinning. And what is going to change has to come from us. And will it happen with one person? No. Will it happen with two? No. Will it happen with three? But if 1, 2, and 3, and 4 reach finally a critical mass, it will make a difference. That's what we're working towards, is a critical mass. So many of the spiritual teachers of our time have said that there's this shift. I think, John, you have said it. There's this shift occurring. And you say, a shift in consciousness? We're reaching a higher level of consciousness? It sure doesn't look like it when you turn on the TV, does it? Huh? Doesn't look like it at all. But every time there's a major change, there's also some chaos involved, because we're shifting things, we're upsetting the equilibrium, things are changing. Now, one thing I learned when I was doing my research is that there are a lot of souls. I may have mentioned this last time we were here, but it bears repeating. There are a lot of souls who have incarnated many, many times and evolved to the point where they really don't need to incarnate anymore because they've learned all the lessons that you have to come here to learn. Okay? In the spirit world, you can still evolve. You can still learn a lot. But you have to come here for certain things. For example, forgiveness. In the spirit world, there's nothing to forgive. It's all love. It's all compassion. All right? You have to come down here so somebody can do something to you that requires forgiving. Or you can do something that requires you to forgive yourself, right? Okay, so we have these souls that don't need to incarnate anymore. They're as far evolved as you can get before total mergence with the divine. Now I say that because that's the ultimate goal. But at the same time, and this is kind of part of the mystery, we are all part of the divine all the time. But there's this kind of total experience of total immersion, total merging that we're all working towards, okay? But these highly developed souls, many, many of them have decided to come at this very time and be on planet Earth to help usher in a new way of being. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if there are some of these highly evolved souls in this room. And it might be you. And even if it isn't, why not help, huh? Because we don't know. Help with that. And how do we help with that? We help with that by raising our own consciousness, right? Because as we heal, everybody heals. And we're working towards that critical mass. Now, there are some things that are involved with the healing of consciousness, or the raising of consciousness. One is letting go of attachments. And that's not easy, because the attachments our ego just loves our attachments, right? But the ego always wants more. Okay, you know, when a child first learns how to speak, they might learn mama or dada, but what's the next word they learn?
Mine.
Well, I was going to say no, and then mine, right? It's mine. I've got to have this. And there's this whole thing about having things, and there's a whole concept of ownership. And as we get older, we want more things, right? And we get this sense of, I've got to have this great car, or this wonderful outfit, or this terrific mate that everybody will be proud of, or you know, fill in the blank. We want to have things of form, right? And if we say, I don't have enough yet, you know, is kind of the underlying message, because once we get the car, the mate, the outfit, the whatever, then there's something else we want, right? Because there's only a kind of a momentary sense of happiness we get from these things. It's not joy. When we say, I don't have enough yet, what we're saying is, I'm not enough yet. Okay? Joy isn't going to come to us from out there. All right? Joy comes from in here, and joy is who you are. Joy is what your soul is, when it's not listening to all that stuff in your head, right? The joy of being, which is the only true happiness, cannot come through any form, possession, achievement, person, or event, through anything that happens. That joy cannot come to you ever. It emanates from the formless dimension within you, from consciousness itself, and thus is one with who you are. That's Eckhart Tolle again. So this enlightenment, this awakening, is a process. I would suggest to you that if anybody tells you they're enlightened, they probably aren't. We're all a work in progress, right? It's a process, and it's transforming, and eventually it becomes integrated into your life. And you become, instead of getting lost in your thinking, you recognize yourself as awareness, and you're aware of the spiritual underpinnings of your experience, and the awareness takes over. Your inner purpose is that kind of awareness. Your outer purpose may change with time, okay? But your inner purpose is to awaken and to become more like God. And when that happens, and you find yourself more in alignment with your inner purpose, then you also become in alignment with your outer purpose, whatever that might be. Okay. One more thing I wanted to share with you, and that is about the present moment. Now, you always hear, oh, we should live in the moment. We shouldn't be caught up in the past or planning the future or whatever. Eckhart Tolle says there's only ever this moment. Life is always now. Wayne Dyer used to say, now is this moment, because here it comes, and whoops, there it goes. Here's another now. Oop, here goes. There's another. You know what I'm saying? So I remember having coffee with a friend of mine. He was 80-something, and I was in my 40s, and somehow we became friends, and we'd have coffee every once in a while. And I was sitting across the table from him, telling him about some problems I was having with one of my kids, and some problems I was having at work, and da-da-da. And all of a sudden it hit me. Wait a minute. I'm sitting here, having a wonderful cup of coffee with this lovely, charming man. This moment is wonderful. And I'm muddying it up with all this stuff, all this unnecessary stuff. Because all you have is the moment. And if we think of this moment right now. We're all sitting here in this wonderful building with so many wonderful people. This moment is just fine, right? And that's what we have, this moment. So you might want to ask yourself, what is your relationship with the present moment? And when you have the answer to that, you'll know what your relationship is to life. Right now, this is life. And it's okay, huh? It's more than okay. The other thing about the present moment is to recognize that your joy in the present moment does not depend on everything being the way you want it to be. When you get home and something, a monkey wrench has been thrown in your plans, or somebody isn't behaving the way you want them to, or somebody left you a message you didn't like on the phone, or you wind up on this phone with customer service for an hour, and, that does not have to spoil the moment, right? To enter the flow of life, but to be in this moment is to experience the joy of life. If you're trying really hard for happiness, it's kind of like chasing the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It has to emanate from within you. And real joy comes from being okay with what is. And if there's something that's troubling you about what is, it's acknowledging that, accepting what is, and then deciding, how am I going to respond to this? Who do I want to be in response to this? How can I bring love to this situation? How can I be one of those souls that ushers the planet into a new way of being, a new way of thinking? Okay. I'd like to share a piece with you. Oh dear, let me see if I can find it. Nope, I don't have it. Never mind, we won't share that one. One thing we're all aware of is that we are witnessing great turmoil in this country. And it's hard, I think, to see in the midst of that turmoil that there's also a resurgence of interest in things spiritual. We have to be the light bearers for this. We have to carry the torch for this, to bring ourselves to that critical mass we talked about. Because when we have a situation like we have, not just in this country, but in the world, we are either going to die or become extinct, or we're going to rise above this in consciousness. One or the other. And I'm asking you, I'm begging you to make the choice for consciousness and live that out in your life, as most of you, I think, are already doing, or you wouldn't be here tonight, right? We have a big task ahead of us. So back to why is this happening for me? Well, what if I told you that you are strong enough to overcome any of the adversities in your life? What if I told you that life knows what it's doing and is safe to open to its flow? What if I told you that all is well, and all is well, and all shall be well? That's Julian of Norwich in the 11th century. I said everything is all right, but it's the same message, right? What if I told you that it's enough for you to live a life of love and to shine, as the Buddhists say, shine one corner? You may think, oh, I don't have any influence, I can't change the world, I'm not in Congress, but you can shine one corner. And if everybody in this room shines one corner, imagine what light that would bring to the world. I'd like to close with a part of a poem by the Persian poet Hafiz. Hafiz said, I wish I could show you when you are lonely or in darkness the astonishing light of your own being. And I leave that with you with love and blessings.
Amen.